Welcome to Awesome Movie Year, the podcast where we take a look back at an awesome year for movies, which is every year. I'm Josh Bell, film critic and writer, and I'm joined by my co-host.
I'm Jason Harris, filmmaker, comedian, and today I'm going to speak in a questionable British accent.
Oh, yeah. You could just speak in your normal accent and fit in with this movie as well that we're about to talk about, because that is clearly not a concern amongst the filmmakers of How Green Was My Valley, which is the subject of today's episode. In this season, we have been talking about the films of 1941, and we are here at the Academy Awards Best Picture winner, which is John Ford's How Green Was My Valley, and is not Citizen Kane, which we discussed in our last episode, but which this movie is frequently, if not almost always, mentioned in reference to, because the big story about it winning the Oscar is that it beat the movie that was then considered, and even as we talked about in the last episode, by some at the time that it was released, the greatest film ever made. And so when you're stacked up against that, that's all that people are going to think of, is that you're the sort of also ran that muscled that one out or whatever.
Also beat the Maltese Falcon. So,
yes,
and Sergeant York, which we didn't like as much, but yeah, I mean, and that's what it should be, because this shows you how ridiculous the Academy has been forever, right? So that's more of an affront of the Academy voting than really, like, this movie, it's not bad, it's not terrible. We know Ford is a legend, but like, come on, what are we doing? So.
Right. I mean, and I think regardless of whether you like this movie or not, it isn't fair to blame the film for the fact that the Academy gave it that award over Citizen Kane. I mean, it's not like they made this movie with the express purpose of like fucking over Orson Welles or something like that.
Though you wouldn't put something like that past one of those studio bigwigs at the time, I would say.
True. And again, as we talked about last episode, there was a lot of antagonism toward Welles and toward that film, but that's not why this was made or why any film was made this year. I mean, it may have been part of the Oscar campaign, but again, that has nothing to do with the creation of the film itself. Although I do think it's interesting, again, just part of the sort of coincidence of it all is that not only did this film beat Citizen Kane at the Oscars, but I feel like you could not pick a more like musty, traditional Hollywood mainstream type film to contrast with Citizen Kane than this movie.
I mean, we talk about this to this day, right? So the last one like this that was a Green Book, do you think? Was that the last one like this that really kind of broke through?
Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, it depends on, and I can't remember the year that Green Book won, if there was another more revolutionary, or, not even revolutionary, but just creative and original type of film that it was up against, maybe. But certainly in terms of that regressive outlook and style, that is absolutely one that people were talking about at that time.
So, I mean, again, like you're saying you can't blame the movie, but it's just the natural thing to compare it to when this happens. I think, Josh, what do you think? I would guess if I looked at every year, the Best Picture winner and then the other nominees, more often than not, I would have voted for something that didn't win.
Right. I mean, and that's another reason why you can't, or I mean, we can and we are blaming this or piling on this film, but why it's really not entirely fair, because yes, that happens many, many years, whether it's egregious like Green Book or simply lots of film fans, cinephiles, whatever, looking at the options and saying this was not the best option to pick. And it's just that not usually the other option is the best film ever made. That's just not how it goes. But absolutely. I mean, we started this podcast with 1994 when we had Pulp Fiction winning the best screenplay Oscar and Forrest Gump winning Best Picture. And I think that's a pretty clear example of something like that.
You could have gone to Shawshank that year also, I feel like, and that would have been good.
I mean, Shawshank is beloved, but I think Pulp Fiction has the Citizen Kane sense of being more revolutionary, being more original.
Sure.
but versus, and I love Shawshank, but Shawshank is very much in that sort of classical Hollywood inspirational drama style.
But as opposed to Forrest Gump, right? Which still, I mean, I'm a fan of it. We know you're not. And
yeah,
I still think Shawshank is so beloved and universally so beloved that had it won, they would have been like, yeah, Pulp Fiction, deserved it. But Shawshank also deserves it. I think that would have been what would have been said.
Yeah, maybe so. I mean, Forrest Gump is certainly one that has a lot more detractors, and I am among them. But anyway, we were talking about How Green Was My Valley, and this was very popular and beloved at the time that it came out. And to be fair, it still is. I mean, this controversy aside, this is still a movie that a lot of people love. But at the time it was released, it was a box office success. It grossed $2.4 million on its budget of $800,000. It was nominated for a total of 10 Oscars, and it won 5 of those, including Best Picture, Best Director for John Ford, Best Supporting Actor for Donald Crisp, who plays the patriarch of this Welsh mining family that the movie is about, Best Black and White Art Direction, and Best Black and White Cinematography. It was also nominated for Best Supporting Actress for Sara Allgood, who plays the matriarch of the family, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Editing, Best Original Score, and Best Sound. So it wasn't even just that Best Picture where it beat Citizen Kane or where it was held up as one of the best of the year.
But you think, Ford we know is a legend and has won multiple Best Director awards and deserves multiple Best Director awards. But I think we would all say that should have been Orson Welles. And certainly cinematography, while this is a good-looking film, I mean, Greg Toland, want to talk about revolutionary, that what he did at Citizen Kane was incredible. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And even the art direction as well in Citizen Kane and some of those techniques. I think we talked about the idea of, the sets with the full ceilings and things like that. Like just the way that they went about all of these craft elements in Citizen Kane was completely new and deserved that recognition, but did not get it.
Real fast, I think he won Best Director back to back, 40 for Grapes of Wrath and 41 for How Green Was My Valley.
Yeah, so I mean, and I think he had won one of them before that as well. So right, it's not like John Ford is some nobody who has come in and stolen.
John Ford's amazing. He's one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. We're not knocking John Ford, and we're not even really knocking this movie. We're just saying like, hey, this is insane that this beats Citizen Kane in all these categories.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm happy to knock this movie, which I don't think is generally very good anyway. But I agree with you about John Ford. I mean, we talked about him on here when we did Stagecoach in our 1939 season, which is a much better film and very well done. And yes, Ford is an absolute legend. My point is that he was already, he was a guy that the Academy could comfortably award because he was a part of the Hollywood establishment as opposed to this upstart Orson Welles.
Well, we all talk like this in Wales.
Yes, and the phoniness of this movie is really heavily baked in. It is based on the 1939 novel by Richard Llewellyn, which was sold as recollections of his boyhood growing up in Wales. Later, following Llewellyn's death, it was revealed that he had not grown up in Wales, did not experience any of these things, although he did have a Welsh background and he did do research and interviews to base his book on. But I think the entire, like a lot of the interest in this film, I think came from the idea of the authenticity of it, that this was, a real glimpse into the Welsh Victorian life. And it started with this guy who wrote this book based on his own experiences, that he is essentially the narrator character played by Roddy McDowall. And just completely false.
So it's all, even the idea that he went and visited his grandparents and stayed in those valleys with them, that's all false too.
No, I think but he didn't say that he had visited Wales. He said he grew up there like this kid did. And no, I believe he did. He was of a Welsh background. And so he did go visit his his family there and talked to people about what life was like. And so he, had some knowledge, did research, but he was the James Frey of his time or whatever. He exaggerated the degree to which he had actually experienced this. And again, I think it was sold on that idea, just like books are now. And if maybe he had said like, oh, well, I just, got some stories from my grandma or whatever, it would have been less, it would have less of a hook.
Right. The story is like, hey, we have this first person experience, but that's Hollywood, baby.
Exactly. And of course, the other Hollywood aspect, and this is up front, they wanted to film this movie in Wales. But as we've been talking about this whole season, World War II affects everything, even though this is not a movie about that or even set during the current moment. But because of the war, they could not go to Wales to shoot. So they built an extensive replica of this Welsh mining village in California. And I will say, to this movie's credit, I mean, not that I know what a Welsh mining village looks like necessarily, but the sets are quite impressive.
Yeah, I mean, the movie looks good. That's not an issue with it.
Right. So they did that, but they also did not cast very many Welsh people in this film, and that's Jason's accent work there. There's some Americans, there's some English people, some Irish people. Donald Crisp, who won his Oscar, also spent his entire life claiming to be Scottish, including doing a Scottish accent in his daily life, and was not.
That's
so
we've come across a few of these over
Yeah.
Awesome Movie Year.
I mean, the one that I thought of immediately was the Native American actor from Ernest
Right.
Goes to Camp.
Hell
But
yeah.
I feel like there have been others, perhaps. So,
Man, eggs weren't the only thing that was erroneous in that movie.
oh yeah. So I guess maybe you do, you do what you got to do to stand out in Hollywood and get yourself cast. But clearly not having the Welsh accents in this film was not a priority for John Ford. And I feel like that's kind of fair, because if your actors can't do those accents or they're not authentic, then it's even maybe more distracting if they're doing bad accents.
Yeah, I agree with that, but at the same time, they're kind of all over the place in this.
They
aren't
are.
they? So.
Yeah, I mean, they don't all sound the same. They don't necessarily even within the same family, they sound like they all have different accents.
And eventually, when they all scatter around the world, maybe they would get there, but not at the time of the story.
Right, exactly. So critics were generally positive about this film. Bosley Crowther in the New York Times said, in purely pictorial terms, How Green Was My Valley is a stunning masterpiece. If, then, it fails to achieve a clear dramatic definition and never quite comes across with forceful, compelling impact, this must be charged to the fact that the spirit of the original novel is too faithfully preserved. And that is the weakness of this picture. For in spite of its brilliant detail and its exquisite feeling for plain, affectionate people, it never forms a concrete pattern of their lives. Apparently, the intention was to have the film follow the formless flow of life, but an audience finds it hard to keep attentive to jerky episodes for the space of 2 hours. If only the structure of the story were as sound as everything else, there is great, as the Welsh idiom has it, that this picture would be.
I think that's fair. This is, again, not the first movie we've covered that feels like, hey, you adapted a book and this is a book adaptation as opposed to a screenplay and a movie. And it's like, because you start with this kid's point of view and then you're with the kid and then you're not with the kid and you're with all these other characters. And then you come back to the kid and then you have the ending voiceover from the kid. And it's like, well, it's really his story. So when we go away from him and we're looking at other points of view, it doesn't necessarily connect as much. Not to say we don't want to see those, but I think we need more usage of him for that.
Yeah, I mean, that change in perspective wasn't necessarily an issue for me because I didn't necessarily want to spend the whole movie with the kid. But it does have, it has a lot of narration. It's set up as the sort of reflections of the adult version of this character as he's leaving the valley and recalling his childhood experiences. And so presumably a lot of that narration is taken from the novel, or at least is meant to reflect the novel. It is very episodic, right? I mean, we cover a period of, I'm not sure how many years it's meant to be. Roddy McDowall doesn't seem to age, but it is a decent length of time, and we get little different incidents throughout this kid's life. And so it does feel a bit disjointed, I think. And, it's based on a novel where they've pared it down. The novel has he has like 4 more siblings in the novel. And I think there's a lot more going on. And there have been subsequent adaptations that are TV miniseries that are, 6 hours or something like that. So there's obviously a lot of material that they left out. And yet it does still feel kind of overstuffed.
Yeah. Also, maybe that's a more effective way to do it, though, where you're giving everyone their time. I didn't watch 6 hours of it. I just watched the movie.
No, nor did I. And neither of those I don't think are very accessible. And I don't think that I would want to watch that. But I mean, it goes to how these things are adapted now, even though those are still from decades ago. But, we tend to get adaptations of big popular novels like this that are miniseries now instead of feature films usually, and it gives them room to breathe. So James Agee in Time magazine said, "How Green Was My Valley is Hollywood's answer to Wordsworth's definition of poetry, emotion recollected in tranquility. Its story is an aging man's remembrance of his boyhood among a lyric, godly race of coal miners in a green Welsh valley. Because his recollections ring true, they are certain to evoke a similar nostalgia in all but the most slab-sided of moviegoers. How Green is almost a photographed novel, is very nearly a silent picture with occasional dialogue sequences. Although it is as dramatically incoherent as life itself, How Green is a radiant idol of the dignity and charm of honest, simple working people."
I mean, there's plenty of dialogue.
It really is. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not sure why he's saying that.
That seems off base to me.
Yeah, I mean, the images are evocative, I guess. And again, they spent all this money and effort to recreate this village, and I think there is the definite tone of nostalgia, and maybe that's why this book and movie were so successful, not just because people thought of the authenticity of it, but because it makes you think about your own childhood and your family and the rosy colored recollections of growing up and things like that. I mean, certainly that's common. We get movies like that. I kept thinking of Kenneth Branagh's Belfast as I was watching this, and there's plenty of others like that.
Right. In America is one of
Yeah.
my favorites.
Right.
But look, you brought up a good point there. Ford had the studio build an 80-acre authentic replica of a Welsh mining town in Brents Crag, which is near Malibu. And we talked about this in Stagecoach when he was using like Arizona and New Mexico. Ford is a master of shooting environments and using real world environments. So like, I feel like he did technically, obviously, the best he could. And there's some amazing stuff like when the mine caves in and they're searching, and you really do feel like this little I guess it's called a gulch or whatever it is, right? Like it's a valley, but it's a town, whatever. And so all that stuff, I mean, given that they couldn't shoot on location, I thought was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, and they built this outdoors. They could have presumably shot it all on a soundstage at the studio, but even though they can't go on location, they create a location for themselves to go to. So, yeah, I mean, certainly every effort is put in to make this feel real, and you certainly can't blame them for that inability to go to Wales and shoot there. And I'm sure that also affected how many Welsh people they were able to cast, because you can't bring those people over necessarily from overseas. So, yeah, that's all fair. I just feel like it's in service of such a mawkish, overly sentimental story that the authenticity of it is overwhelmed by the sappiness of it to me.
I feel like Sergeant York is not that far off from this.
Right. I mean, and this is to me better than Sergeant York, because Sergeant York also is slathered with that like excessive patriotism, which of course was a message for the audience at the time. And this is patriotic in a way about Wales, but an American Hollywood film doesn't have that same sort of heavy-handedness about patriotism for another country, I think.
Yeah, I want to go to Wales. I've never been.
Neither have I.
I did. I think we won an award in Wales for our little film that we've mentioned here, Rick Thunder.
Oh, nice.
I know we were nominated at the Welsh Film Festival, but I don't know.
Nice.
I had not recalled that, so that's wonderful. So I figured I should get a UK review since this is technically set
With
in the UK.
accent, please.
No accent from me. The unbylined review in the London Times said, "How Green Was My Valley has won many awards in America, and it is not difficult to understand the honors it has gained. There is no conscious playing down of a story which was written, as Richard Llewellyn himself has said, as a, quote, requiem for craftsmen. Much of the acting has more than the polished mannerisms of the studios. The valley on the screen at times catches something of the tone and accent of the men who inhabited it in the book, and the voices of the Welsh singers are a continual delight. John Ford's direction is honest enough, but even while he is producing scene after scene, which, on the surface, seem to give a reasonable picture of life in a Welsh mining village in the closing years of the last century, the feeling persists that his observation is not cutting deep enough. His pattern is too refined for the complex designs made by Welsh emotionalism and the brutality of the times, and the requiem for craftsmen remains unsung."
Well, there you go. There's, you can go back to, something like Gone with the Wind and giving it that kind of overly sentimental look without, even with the tragedies and everything. But I also was thinking about Billy Elliot, which
Yes.
we covered a film on this show. And I feel like they really nailed the desperation and the haves versus the have-nots, unionization, and how important these mines were to those towns. So I think that was more effective in Billy Elliot and that little codger sure can dance.
Yes. Yeah. No dancing or no ballet dancing in this film. But I absolutely thought of that too, because and I wonder if the makers of Billy Elliot, how influenced they were here, because the arc for the father character is almost exactly the same. It related to the union, where here the mining workers are going to unionize, and all of the brothers, Roddy McDowall's older brothers who work in the mine, they support the union and they want to go on strike. And the father is against it. He is saying, we just have to work hard. And ultimately, they have this big schism over it. And that's exactly what happens between the father and the older brother in Billy Elliot. And that father becomes a scab, or he almost does, right? And then they finally pull him back. But they have essentially the same disagreement. And I agree, it's covered more effectively there. And that the whole union effort to me was one of the big failures of this film, because this is, Billy Elliot obviously set many, many, many years later. This is a time when unions, I think, are first really starting up. And it's a big political topic. And we kind of gloss over how the strike gets resolved. And it seemed like it was a bit of a timid representation of that.
I always find it, I think you're right. And I also always find it, in the real world and in film, like, hey, these bosses are going to look out for our best interests. We're living through it right now, right? So it's just, unionizing, good. Obviously, unions can become corrupt, but, you got to protect each other. Proletariat rise up, right?
Yeah, I agree. And I don't think that this movie is depicting that point of view as the right one, the point of view of like, oh, we should just trust the bosses. But I do think it is pulling its punches a bit in its depiction of unionization. And you could say, well, that's not really what it's about. It's about the family and it's about childhood and growing up. But I think Billy Elliot is also about that, but they also find room to give the union story the seriousness that it deserves.
Yes, it's a better movie.
It is. I agree, even though I don't love it. So, I had not seen this one before. Jason, had you?
No, I think we all, it's a trivia question for most of us at this point in time. But as we can't say enough good things about John Ford. Any John Ford movie is going to be worth watching. And I would have liked it if they were able to have a little more Welshness in there, but I get why they couldn't.
Yeah, I certainly have seen many John Ford movies, and we did talk about him with Stagecoach, and this probably wasn't at the top of my list of other John Ford movies to see, but of course I was aware of it because of the Citizen Kane thing. And I do think that it has its own positive reputation at this point, beyond just that, because of John Ford. And I don't know if people read the book anymore, but I feel like there is a following for this film that is more than just the trivia question. But yeah, it was not the John Ford movie I most wanted to watch necessarily. I'm sure I'd rather watch one of his westerns that I haven't seen, and I probably should watch some more of those, but I did not. So, Dave, had you seen this one?
Nope. I thought it was all right. We'll get into it.
All right. I think that might be the most enthusiastic reaction amongst the three of us.
And that's as enthusiastic as it gets. So
yes. Yeah. So anything else you want to say about the background of this film, Jason?
Hiddly-dee and fiddly fun. Here we go. Let's have some fun.
Jason is now a leprechaun. We will
you can shift your accents in this film. It's not a problem.
So true. We'll come back and talk more of our general thoughts on How Green Was My Valley. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of 1941, we're talking about the Academy Awards Best Picture winner, How Green Was My Valley. And we've talked a lot about how this is not as good as Citizen Kane, but I feel like that's a very high bar for any movie to reach. So I know we were not that into it, but Jason, did you have anything that you particularly liked about this movie?
I think I probably referenced it at the beginning there, right? You know, like the use of environment, which Ford excels at, I think was probably my favorite aspect of it. You really do feel like you're in this little hamlet and you get a real sense of what the community is. And, you know, one thing that I also notice is like in movies like this is how often religion fucks people up.
Yes. Yeah. I noticed that too. And that's one area where I am sort of like torn on what is the movie's perspective, because everyone across the board really is so prideful and stubborn in this movie. And it's not even just, yes, there is that religion fucks you up, and the deacons, who are the sort of town elders, are clearly antagonistic. They're mean and close-minded, and we don't like them. But even Donald Crisp's character, the mother and the father of this family, both of them are very prideful and close-minded in their own ways. And even the younger character, right? The main character, Roddy McDowall, decides that instead of going off to school, where he's given this opportunity that no one else in his family has had, he's going to work in the mines too, because, you know, that's honest work, or I want to follow in my family's footsteps. And I spend the whole movie thinking, oh, all you people are idiots.
Well, you know, a few things about that. One, I think part of the reason, you know, that they're all so, you know, kind of, their reputation is so important to them is they're not going anywhere. This is it, right? This town is all they have. That's going to be where they were born, where they lived, where they died. Obviously, we see with the younger generation, they're able to get out, but this is it for them. So, you know, any type of scandal, like when the daughter wants to get a divorce, that's going to just wreck the whole family. And that's the deal with the union situation as well. Going to the deacons, I thought the one deacon is just a bastard. He sucks, right?
He really is. The other ones don't ever really even speak. I think we just see them in like from the back or something as they're sitting in that pew.
Well, but there is the love interest one who is the daughter who gets married, right? And everything. She and I guess the other religious leader have a real kind of connection that he's trying to avoid, but also like entertain. But he's a good guy. He just is confused.
Right, but he's not a deacon. He is the pastor or whatever. The deacons are sort of they're sort of like an advisory board or something. They're the town elders, and he's an outsider, right? He comes in, the church has hired him, presumably the Anglican church or whatever has hired him as the new pastor or whatever they call the leader of the church there. And he's kind of like, he's gone to school and he's got some vaguely progressive ideas or whatever, Mr. Griffith, played by Walter Pidgeon. And he comes into the town and he falls in love with the main character's older sister, Angharad, played by Maureen O'Hara. But even he is so prideful because they're in love and she wants them to get married. And it is not, I don't think it would have been like against the rules, or it wouldn't have necessarily been a scandal if they got married. They're both single. He's not a Catholic priest. He's allowed to get married. And yet he refuses to marry her because he's like, I cannot subject you to this life of poverty, even though she already lives in poverty.
Yeah.
And he's got a place. He's got a job. It seems fine.
Yeah.
But she ends up marrying this snooty rich guy, the son of the mine owner, and is just miserable. So I feel like they both have just unnecessarily brought misery on themselves because of some weird sense of pride.
It's a real first reformed situation, isn't it? So I do want to get back to this idea of Roddy McDowall's character choosing to work in the mines. You can't really blame him on that. I mean, one, no one else in his family has really gone to school. Two, the school teacher's another asshole and gets what he deserves somewhere along the line, right? He's not treated well at school. I mean, obviously he doesn't give it enough of a shot, but sticking with what's known as opposed to what's unknown, I can see how people who live in like small towns like this, where the mine is the entire economic driver of the whole burg, I can see why they would want to follow in family footsteps.
Yeah, I mean, I understand, I guess, the motivation, but the cumulative effect of it was just extremely frustrating. And, it's also interesting because you think of that if it was like a situation where his family says, oh, we can't afford to send you to university. You've got to come and work in the mine to support the family along with your brothers, or what's up with this fancy book learning? We don't like that. We want you to just be, like us. No, his parents are saying, go. And it's like a state supported thing. He's able to afford it. And even his initial problems at school with the asshole teacher, as you say, seem to have been taken care of. And he's ultimately graduating with honors or whatever exactly it is. So it really just seemed like a level of stubbornness. You say like, oh, this is a place where people don't get out, but he has a chance to get out, and not even in the way that his brothers do, where you see like they leave out of desperation because they can't get work at the mine and they have to go off to America or Canada or New Zealand or whatever. I think one of them does, because that's where there's those opportunities and they don't want to. But he is proactively being given a chance, and he could support his family better if he had some high-paying job that he could get. But he's like, no, I'm going to go work in the mine. And, there's no child labor laws. So he just does.
So this teacher like picks on him and beats him, right, with the switch, spanks him. He's a jerk. He's not a good teacher at all. So,
yes.
And these two townies or local drunks or whatever come into the school, and they're teaching the kid how to box, and then they come in and they're like, do this whole bit about how the teacher could never be a good boxer and this is why, and then they just kind of punch him out. And I thought that was a fun scene.
Yeah, I mean, those characters are kind of like in the background, and then
right. That's what I mean. They don't do anything until then, so you want a little more something from them before that. But it was a good scene. Yeah,
I think so. And that actor Reese Williams, who plays the local drunk boxer Dibando, is I don't know if he's the only Welsh person, or I think he's the only Welsh person with a substantial role. We have the singers, the chorus, or whatever. And he was also like the coach to whatever extent for the dialogue. And in the original version, and in some, I think the version released in the UK, he was also the narrator as the older version of Roddy McDowall's character of Hugh. But here we have a different narrator with an American accent, because Americans can't deal with too many accents, apparently.
I mean, I think we're past that, I hope.
We are maybe now, I hope, yes. But at the time, I think the studio decided they needed this American narrator instead. So, yeah, that's fun. I mean, that teacher character is so cartoonishly evil and mean. It's a little over the top. But yeah, I mean, but there is that whole arc, right, where he's getting bullied. First, he gets bullied by a fellow student, and then he learns to stand up for himself. And then he like befriends his bully, it seems like, and the bully's on his side against the teacher. And so then he's being bullied by the teacher, and Dibando comes in and beats up the teacher. And then it seems like things are good for him, and he's learned to stand up for himself, and he's also learned whatever they're teaching him in school. And then he's like, fuck it, I'm just going to go be a coal miner.
That's right. So he's got to get back to the valley, Josh. See, the school is in another valley.
True.
And it's about his valley.
Yeah, we don't know how green that other valley was.
No, it's how green was my valley, not how green was the valley next door.
Right.
We had to come back to the valley.
Yes.
On the limited series, you could explore both valleys, but
true. I mean, how many? Because what's her Bronwyn, right? The woman who marries his older brother comes from another valley as well. I don't know if that's the valley where the school is, or maybe it's a third valley.
Yeah.
How many valleys are there?
Maybe she went to Sweet Valley High. We're not exactly sure.
I can hope.
Yeah.
So, could you tell the older brothers apart at any point?
One's name started with an L.
Did it? Okay.
I think so. No, I mean, like you said, it got pared down, but I mean, that didn't bother me that much, right? I mean, it did get confusing even at the beginning with that Bronwyn character, right? Because that's another good example of a character who she comes in, she gets the star entrance. I fell in love with her right away, right? And you're like, oh, she's going to be an important character. And then she just marries the dude, and then we never hear from them again, and they're in the background of a few scenes, right? So that's what I think when you're saying episodic, that's what is a real episodic feel to this. But they do that over and over again in this film.
Yeah, I mean, Bronwyn does. She doesn't disappear. I mean, there is an.
She just has nothing much to do.
Yeah, she's just kind of a long suffering. I mean, she marries the older brother, and then he dies in a mining accident, and she gives birth to a child, and then Hugh moves in with her. Yeah, although they kind of downplayed that. So she's still there, and she's there all the way through the end of the movie. I mean, when we see the father also getting in the mining accident at the end of the movie, and everyone is the family is there. I mean, she's stayed behind while all the other brothers have moved overseas. She's still there, so the family is down to Hugh and the mother and Bronwyn, and so she sticks around. But yeah, that introduction, like you said, where he's like, I fell in love with her right away. You think she's going to have this huge impact on his life, and it doesn't quite amount to that.
Do you think when these brothers moved to other countries, they were looking for valleys to live in as well?
I mean, maybe they came here to Green Valley, which we have as well here in Las Vegas. So,
I mean, it's right there for them.
Yeah, I don't know if there was anybody here at that time period, really, but maybe they were. I feel like they, maybe they all found wives and children, started families, and I don't know. We don't learn. There's one scene, right, where Hugh is pointing to points on a map and saying, "Oh, so and so is here, and so is here," or whatever. And the mother is there's so many scenes where the mother doesn't understand basic concepts. They're trying to show that she's, I guess, she's simple salt of the earth, but she doesn't seem to understand what a map is. But she's like, oh, they're so close together. And he's like, oh no, it's a piece of paper that represents the world. And she's like, I don't get it.
Yes, that's what we were waiting for. The Josh performance of the day right there. So, one thing I thought of, though, that at that point in time, right, I guess we're just writing letters back home and everything, but our families, are they visiting? Are they keeping in touch? Probably very little at this point in time. But.
Yeah, I mean, they can write letters, which take very long time to arrive, but that's probably the most. I mean, you can't visit. It would take weeks on a steamship just to get to one of these places and cost a massive amount of money. So nobody, unless they're incredibly rich, are taking little trips overseas, I don't think. So
yeah.
No, once these people move away, you never see them again. Yeah, I mean,
that's sad.
They contrast, though, right? They do see the sister, Angharad, because she moves. They say that she and her husband go to Cape Town, to South Africa, presumably where his family also owns a mine.
Mines,
Perhaps their name is Musk later on. But, he's able to do that, travel there, and then she can travel back because he's very wealthy. But the brothers, no.
Let's go back towards the beginning to one of the major incidents where the mom is yelling at this crowd who's angry at the family and the unionization, and the dad, even though the dad's trying to keep peace with everybody, right?
Right. Well, they're angry at him for not supporting the union.
Right. So she goes and makes a speech and talks about what a good guy he is. And then she falls into a snowy river, and he falls, the kid Hugh falls in as well. And it paralyzes him. She's on bed rest, and he's got to learn to walk again. And I thought that was done well. I mean, again, we know Ford is very good at big events on film.
Yeah, it was fine. I mean, you get the sense of the chaos there, and they fall in the river, and I don't know what exactly happened to them that causes them to not be able to walk for a while, but then be fine. It's one of those vague movie conditions where they're incapacitated for as long as the story requires. But sure, that was
I'm trying to find some positives here that we can latch on to, Josh.
right. I mean, and Hugh kind of bonds with Mr. Griffith, the preacher, during that period, who helps him out and, helps him. This is the second movie this season we've watched where a character has to sort of physically rehabilitate to learn to walk again somehow. But
what was the first?
An ornamental hairpin. It's,
I didn't watch that one.
It's okay, Jason.
Yeah.
No worries. You don't need to watch the movies.
Yeah. I found it odd that Hugh in this recovery was able to stand but not walk. That was odd to me.
The whole thing, like I said, it makes no sense. And it's probably one of those things that maybe in the book it was like, oh, well, this must have been the childhood experience of this guy, but he made it up. So I don't know. But dramatically, yeah, it provides that chance for him to kind of be an observer, right? He has to lie downstairs in the house because he can't walk. And so he's there seeing everyone coming and going and what they're doing. I mean, bonds with the preacher and all of that stuff. So it makes sense as a dramatic device and gives what you were talking about, the chance for Hugh to kind of be in the background a bit while we see what's happening to other characters, which is a bit, again, disjointed because it's like, is he the main character? Now he's sort of not doing anything, but it gives us this wider view of the whole family, even though, as I said, from my perspective, the brothers were all kind of like, the one got married. And for a while I was like, okay, there's the one who's married, and then there's the one who is leading the chorus of singers. But then it turned out that was the same one.
Yeah, it gets mishmashy, Josh. I'll give you that. But I never got confused about who the dad was.
True. The dad and the mom and Angharad, the sister, and Hugh himself, and Bronwyn, the sister-in-law, and Mr. Griffith, the preacher. Those were all relatively distinctive characters.
We're really reaching for straws on this episode.
Yeah. And what did you think of the acting in this film, Jason? I mean, aside from all the different accents, I thought a lot of the acting here was really stilted. Maureen O'Hara, who we've also talked about in Wuthering Heights, she was terrible, I thought, in this film.
Stilted is the word I would have used. So you pretty much nailed that one for me. I think the mom was probably the standout, and the preacher that we're talking about, I thought he did a good job. Those were probably the two best. Donald Crisp won Best Supporting Actor this year. I didn't really have a problem with him. You could question his accent. I didn't think he was bad though, but yeah, it just wasn't. It wasn't a top Ford for me, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the love story, the sort of forbidden love, even if it's just forbidden by them, love story between Angharad and Mr. Griffith is central to this. I think it's part of what the movie was sold on. I mean, Walter Pidgeon gets top billing in this film as Mr. Griffith, and I never got any sense of passion or romance between these characters. They don't have chemistry. They're both kind of stiff in their performances, especially Maureen O'Hara. But Walter Pidgeon isn't that. I mean, he's good when he's giving these fiery speeches about like the intolerance of the town, but not so much when he's romancing Angharad. So that to me was a big miss.
You needed Clark Gable in there.
Yeah, it would have been a little, someone a little more robust.
He could have just used his normal voice and none of us would have cared.
Right. No. And I mean, they all do. So right. What difference does it make? But I think that held me back. And Roddy McDowall, who was already as a kid had been in like dozens of films, he is also a bit stiff. And I think also because it takes place across a period of years, but Roddy McDowall is still this small child, it didn't get the maturation of the character to me.
Yeah, that would have been interesting if when he moves in and he's, Miss, I'm in love with you, Miss. I have been since the day I seen ya.
I thought maybe that was where he's a pirate now. I thought maybe that was where it was going. That, I mean, in reality, they're probably not very far apart in age. And once he gets older, he could have ended up marrying her or something. But
that's what I thought they were going to go towards. But,
yeah, not so much. So, Dave, you liked this more than we did. What did you like about it?
I liked it a little more than you guys. Well, I don't even know. I just like this kind of movie where it's like a series of memories. Like I like that kind of setup for a movie. And so if I can enjoy the characters in that kind of movie, it's enjoyable enough. So I really can't say that there's a lot of like huge positives to like add on. I mean, it's just a nice movie and I like the kind of setup of it all. But a lot of the same things you guys have been talking about are the problems I had. I did want to say, I must have missed the whales thing because, a lot of the stuff you guys are talking about, it feels like a small town American story. Like,
did you not get like that is like the core essential concept
I don't
of
think
this film.
I don't think it added anything. It could have just been a mine in some small American town. I don't know.
What did you think when they were like, we're going to go overseas to America?
I thought they were going overseas somewhere else. I don't I thought it was the other way around. Man, so I don't know.
What about all the singers who were singing in Welsh?
Were they singing in Welsh? I thought they were singing.
They sure were.
I thought they were singing in American. I wrote down a line that I liked: prayer, and by prayer I don't mean mumbling and shouting and rolling around and wallowing like a hog in religious sentiment. That was pretty good stuff there.
Yeah, and that's Mr. Griffith, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's presented as like he's the preacher, but he has this forward-thinking mindset, and he's about real connection with God rather than just the rituals of the church or whatever, the rules that people are so fixated on. So
yeah, I like that. Between that and the kind of the unionization and all that kind of like all that kind of stuff, it felt a little progressive, even though in the moment it's certainly not a time frame where you see a lot of that.
Right. And that's what I was saying earlier too, is that it's like it's progressive in some ways, but also not. I mean, it is inherently conservative in it that it's this nostalgic fueled recollection of a time of, all these people are going to die of black lung or whatever. It's not something you want to necessarily look back on fondly.
Yeah.
How green was their valley, Josh?
We will never know because the movie is in black and white.
That's true.
Yeah. Dave, you also watched this on a virtual reality headset?
Yeah, we could.
Wow.
We could mention that. I'm probably the first person to ever watch this movie in a virtual reality home theater. I had to kill two birds with one stone and watch this for the podcast, but also I'm going to be on Jimmy and Jake Gonzalez's Cinema Snobs VR podcast show where they watch a movie in virtual reality. And I was like, why don't I just do both of these things? Because I have a busy week. And
so where did you get this headset from?
They let me borrow it so I could get prepared for their show. And it's a Meta Quest, and it's the big screen Oculus room or something like that. And it looks like you're literally in this room. It's like a kind of Art Deco-ish room with a big giant screen that really does feel like it's like 10 times the size of your TV at home, And there was a little Roomba running around the room, cleaning it up for some reason.
It seems distracting.
Yeah, that didn't distract you?
Well, you could turn down the lights and then you don't see it. So I turned the lights all the way down, and it was definitely more immersive. I probably would have been on my phone otherwise watching this movie.
But I have to question how immersive it was since you didn't know that the movie was set in Wales.
Well, I'm also an idiot, so,
Jason, should we rate this movie out of 5 green, black and white valleys?
Sure. 5 green, black and white valleys. I think I gave it 2.5. I'll stick with that.
Yeah, I give it a 2.5 as well. It's not, I mean, we've been kind of crapping on it, but it's not that it's terrible. It's just sort of underwhelming. Yeah. So Dave, how would you rate this?
I'll go with 3. But again, it's not great.
Yeah. So we'll come back and talk about the legacy of How Green Was My Valley. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of 1941, we are talking about Oscar Best Picture winner, How Green Was My Valley. And I feel like, sadly, the legacy of this movie is what we've been talking about the entire time, is its comparisons to Citizen Kane. But it does have its own following, and it has continued to be popular and to be viewed. I will say it's probably, it's certainly not the worst Best Picture winner ever. I'm sure we could come up with many more that we personally think are worse. Or
you
that
love Crash.
Yeah, Crash is a great example. I mean, Green Book is one too. I think the most famous one that comes up is the the Greatest Show on Earth, which I've not seen, but I think that's often held up as the worst Best Picture winner. But yeah, it's fine. And as we said, John Ford, a legend. We talked about his career in our episode on Stagecoach. He has won 4 Oscars for Best Director, including for this film, as well as The Informer, The Grapes of Wrath, which I believe were both before this, and then The Quiet Man, which came afterwards. What I thought was especially impressive, this was the last movie he made before he joined the Navy during World War II and had a period, directors during this time period were incredibly prolific, so had a period of 4 years in which he did not make a feature film between 1941 and 1945. But while he was in the military, he made 2 propaganda short films that won Oscars. So he managed to serve in the war and make 2 Oscar-winning films during that time.
Also has a Purple Heart and a Presidential Medal of Freedom. Real American, Josh.
Come on, yeah. You can't do better than that.
You have a favorite John Ford movie?
We talked about Stagecoach is great, or I think what my favorite is the Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. That's my favorite. I think I haven't seen it in a really long time, but I like that a lot. I mean, The Searchers is great too. So these are all very obvious picks. I don't know if you have a favorite you wanted to mention.
I mean, mine's probably The Searchers because I haven't seen The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, and obviously that's a movie I need to see.
Yeah, that is I'm sure, if we ever get to that year, that's certainly one for us to talk about. But Stagecoach is great too, as we covered in our 39 season. Roddy McDowall, who again already had like dozens of credits here, and amazingly one of these people who has this career that spans, from the 1930s to the 1990s. And he was a child actor and then an adult actor and all the way into, basically right till he passed away in the 1990s. He was doing voice work. He's best known for appearing in the Planet of the Apes movies and the subsequent like spin-off TV show playing multiple characters. But I mean, as a kid, he did a Lassie movie. He did My Friend Flicka. He worked with Orson Welles on his version of Macbeth. I remember him from the Disney movie The Black Hole, the sci-fi movie. He was in the Fright Night movies in the 80s. He did a Pixar voice in A Bug's Life. I mean, it's just an astoundingly long career.
270 screen and stage appearances, a Tony and an Emmy, one of the all-time working men of Hollywood.
Yeah. So Maureen O'Hara, we've also talked about in our episode on The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Did I say Wuthering Heights earlier? Or was The Hunchback of Notre Dame? I don't know.
That's okay.
Yeah.
No.
We'll forgive you.
Thank you. Yeah, maybe I got it right before. I don't know what I'm saying from one moment to another, but
lots of John Wayne flicks there, though.
Yeah, they work together a lot. And I think when we talked about Hunchback, like she was good in that film. I just think she's really, really stiff here. But she worked with Wayne a lot. They did Westerns together. She basically retired after the 1960s and made a couple of TV appearances. And I think, as we said in that previous discussion, I thought it was nice. She came out of retirement in 1991 to appear in the John Candy film, Only the Lonely.
I just rewatched The Great Outdoors for maybe for a project that we have coming up. I think I should watch more of these John Candy movies that I need to revisit there. I love Uncle Buck. I know you're not a fan, but it's time to get into the 90s Candy stuff.
Yeah, maybe watch Only the Lonely, see how Maureen O'Hara does in that film.
Yeah, that was my first time seeing The Great Outdoors. Can you believe that?
I can. I may or may not have seen that when I was a kid. I feel like I watched a lot. We probably talked about this when we did Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. I think I watched a lot of John Candy stuff when I was a kid and then didn't revisit any of it later on. So, maybe I would enjoy that too. I think I saw Only the Lonely back in the 90s. I don't remember.
Yeah, I feel like I might have seen that. I definitely saw Who's Harry Crumb.
Well, John Candy is not in How Green Was My Valley. Walter Pidgeon, who again he's top billed here, even though Roddy McDowall is really the main character. This was kind of an introduction. I love how they credit him as Master Roddy McDowall. Like, our young sir here is making his American film debut.
Good stuff right there.
Yeah.
Walter Pidgeon, 2 Academy Award noms for Best Actor, Mrs. Miniver and Madame Curie, back to back yet again, 42 and 43. Some other movies he was in: Forbidden Planet, Funny Girl. That's it.
Yeah, I mean,
Those are two.
he was a leading man here during this period for a brief time, and then, you know, kind of transitioned into a character actor career into the 70s. Donald Crisp, who won the Oscar for this film, another incredibly prolific actor going back to the earliest days of film into the 1960s. And, you know, later in his career was in National Velvet with Elizabeth Taylor, was in Pollyanna. And again, my favorite thing, spent his entire life pretending to be Scottish.
Well, what are you gonna do about that, Josh?
He's like fat
Shrek.
bastard from the Austin Powers movies.
That's, you know, you're pretending, you might as well go with it, Josh.
Right.
That's it. So Barry Fitzgerald, who played Siddhartha, the boxing manager, has a Best Supporting Actor award. And this is what confused me, Josh. I don't know how this works. He was simultaneously nominated for the Academy Award for Best Actor for the same performance.
That does not seem like something that should be allowed.
For Going My Way. I'm very confused by that, and I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, I you know what? I'm sure there's a story there, but I'm not really sure what that is.
If you guys know, let us know.
Yeah, maybe it was something that was, you know, rules were changed. I know that like there were times when, and I think this is also not allowed now, where actors maybe were nominated for, you know, like two different performances in the same category or something like that. So they changed the rules over time, but that does seem like an odd and not allowable thing. You know, we talk about, Jason, you talk about category fraud. Maybe that's the solution. Some people thought this guy was a supporting actor. Some people thought he was a leading actor. Enough people thought both that he got both nominations.
Wow.
I just, I mean, you know, when we get to Awesome Movie Year 2024 and we get to Kieran Culkin in A Real Pain as a supporting actor, I have a lot to say on that.
Clearly, Kieran Culkin, John Candy, both actors very relevant to How Green Was My Valley. As I said, this was adapted later into two miniseries on the BBC television network in both 1960 and 1975. It was also made into a Broadway musical in 1966 called A Time for Singing. It was made into a stage play that was not a musical in 1990. None of these other adaptations seem to be particularly well known, but it definitely seems like something that is ripe for readapting now. I think, again, we would get a streaming series or something. And Richard Llewellyn himself wrote 3 sequels to the novel, although he took a while to do it. In 1960 was the first one, and then in 1966 and 1975 that follows Hugh, like as he becomes an adult and throughout his life and starts his own family and all this stuff. So you could see all of that stuff becoming this, you know, epic multi-season Netflix series or something like that.
One might say you would get different hues of green.
We would finally get to see how green the valley was.
There you go. That's important.
So
in HDR.
Right, exactly. It would be extremely, extremely green and very, very detailed, the valley. But no, that's, you know, the last time this was adapted in any way was in that 1990 stage production. So it seems like maybe it's time. This is something that people...
You're the man for the job.
I'm certainly not, but someone could do it eventually. So anything else you want to mention about the legacy of this movie, Jason? Is that your insulting version of Welsh?
I don't think it's insulting. It's just gibberish.
You're making their language sound like gibberish.
Oh, well, I love the Welsh people and they love me.
Of course they do. Yeah, they gave you a short film award.
I think so. Don't quote me on that.
So that is How Green Was My Valley, and that is this episode of Awesome Movie Year. You can give us your nostalgic reflections online and on social media.
We're at awesomemovieyear.com, Awesome Movie Year on Facebook, and the gram, as the kids say, the gram. And then, tag us on the Letterboxd. When you go on there and you watch our movies, you write Awesome Movie Year in the tag section, and we know you've tagged us. So then we say, hey, they tagged us. Let's talk about it. And then we talk about it. I'm also on Letterboxd. I'm at Go For Jason. And then I'm also on all the other socials at Jason Harris Comedy. So there.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, also, Eat This Comedy has a new website. Check it out.
Yeah. Thank you, Jason. You can find some old stuff from me at joshbellhateseverything.com. I'm at Josh Bell Hates Everything on Facebook. at Signal Bleed on Blue Sky and on Letterboxd. And as Jason so eloquently put it, if you're on Letterboxd and you watch one of the movies we talk about, this one or anything else, tag Awesome Movie Year. It is very simple to put the tags on Letterboxd as you explained it there. And we would love to know what you think. And you can check out our producer, David Rosen's awesome podcast, Piecing It Together.
Check out Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts and follow us on social media at Piecing Pod.
Jason, what's in our next episode?
It's not my choice. It's the Dave's pick.
Dave, what are you picking for us?
Well, speaking of all of the reminiscing and the memories of the movie we just watched, I am going to try to figure out whether I've ever seen this one before, because my dad used to always make me watch these Abbott and Costello movies. We're doing Hold That Ghost.
So tune in next time for Hold That Ghost, and thanks for listening to Awesome Movie Year.
Thank you for listening to Awesome Movie Year. Make sure to follow Awesome Movie Year on Facebook, at Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter, and at Awesome Movie Year on Instagram. And if you like the show, review us and rate us with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.